Okay, so let's see how this works with this camera. What I have here are a pack of chicken thighs I just got from Safeway, and fortunately 30% off. So there you go. The total weight on this is 6.26 pounds. I expect this is going to trim down to about 3 to 4 pounds. Let me, I guess I'm going to edit this video. Maybe, or just talk all the time. I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how long it lasts. Okay, let's, one thing, when you're cutting your cryo open, one thing I'm going to encourage is you be very careful about not cutting the skin. You don't want to have any big dings in the chicken skin. Even though we're going to poke them with the jacquard before we're done, we don't want to have holes and dings. So here's a chicken thigh. That's kind of what they look like. As I'm sure you're aware, they're very large. They lay out. They're amorphous. Not at all something nice in a box. Now, some people, and I used to do this, would sort these pieces by weight before you get too much further along. Just right now, I'd pick out the really small ones and the really large ones and set those aside. Except I'm not going to do that. I don't do that anymore. What I found is the sorting is best done after you've trimmed. So first thing, you'll see that the piece, the thigh, has a skin that on one side there's a little streak of fat on the side of the thigh. Oh look, there's some blood there too. We want to make sure that's gone by the time it's cooked. Okay, the skin on the other side, however, and I will call it the thin side, if you want to use a terminology, is attached pretty securely to the thigh. So when you want to go to cut it, you want to completely unhook the skin except where it's attached right on the end here. So now I have that hanging off. Okay, and that exposes the meat. And you notice that the fat is right there, and you'll do this again. You should come off. Sometimes it sticks a little right here. Just use your finger to loosen it up. And the only reason you really want to make sure it's completely loose in there is because we're going to cut the meat to square it off, or to make it rectangular. And you see how different these two are in size already. Well, after we cut them, you might be surprised that they won't be that different in size. Here, let me get a third one here. And again, the skin kind of hangs on one side. So you just want to unhook it. And I'm making coffee, so I'm here smelling my coffee and wishing I was having coffee instead. Okay, so to trim the piece, there's the knuckle end on the bone here. Then over here on this end, it gets kind of thin. So what I'll usually do, I start with a thin end, and I look at the piece, and it's usually right about the end of the bone. I just take it all up. By the way, for Sherry's sake, that white knife should be very familiar. She has the other one that came in that package. Okay, so I've cut that off. Now on this side, this will be a little harder. I'm going to cut the piece and be careful when you do this, because if you have a knife accident, you will cut your finger off. Okay, so now I've started the trim on this piece. There's a little bit of meat that hangs on over here that gets kind of big, so you might actually just kind of go in and take that off. And it doesn't have to be really perfect. Last thing, this piece of meat right here on the end that has a fat, just chop that off. And what we now have is a somewhat trimmed piece of chicken. That's most of the cutting we're going to do. And you'll notice that after doing that, the skin will now pretty much fit all the way over the chicken. We do have skin hanging off here on the side. That gets trimmed off before we're done. But after brining is when I would normally do that. In fact, don't try to make the piece too perfect right now, because when you brine it, the meat actually may change shape a little bit. And so if you're going to do any final trimming, like I just did right there, you're going to probably want to wait to do that until after till after you've actually brined it. And that's when you do the final piece assembly. And I'll show you that, even though I'm not going to brine the chicken for the sake of this video. I will show you about the final piece assembly. So there's a piece right there. Let's set that aside. Let's get this big whomping piece here, this enormous piece. Look at the size of that thing. Such a freak. Except, by the way, it's got really good marbling on it too. It's probably really good. So again, we're gonna come down. Now all this meat that I'm cutting off, normally I would actually save it along with the bits of bone and make stock with that. It makes great chicken stock, especially with the bones cut off, the ends of the bones cut off. Okay, again, we're gonna come down here, and the bone is a little tough. You want to be careful not to leave bone chips behind when you do this. And the final cut here, we just take this little piece off. You see that it's kind of still a little, if you look at it, flatten it out, you'll see it's still a little large over here, kind of angular. So we'll just kind of nip that off a little without cutting the skin. And now, when you spread the skin back on, not a bad piece. And actually, not that different in size. The bone's bigger, but it's not that different in size than this piece. This piece, I don't know, might cut it down a little more, but usually you want to get that bone cut right on the first one, because trimming it down more afterwards doesn't work. So here, I'll just do 3 pieces of this for the sake of the demo, for this portion of your demo video. And again, you see I'm looking at it, and I see how the line is probably right about here. So again, it usually catches some bone. That's okay. And then over here on this side, and just make it straight and parallel, and there's the knuckle on the bone. We're just going to cut through that. This piece is coming out smaller. It's what I expected. And we'll take off, just cut right down through and take off this piece here. So you now have a trimmed piece. And again, the meat kind of hangs out there a little far. It's a little excess. That'll bunch up kind of funny when we go to assemble the piece, so we'll cut that off now. With a little experience, you get the idea. And again, so here's a small piece. Here's a kind of a medium piece. And here's a large piece that I trimmed. And the medium and the large are about the same size. Those are kind of on the large size actually for the box. You might actually make them a little more narrow when you're cutting them. And let me see if I can go back and kind of fix that up a little. I mean, they do get smaller when you cook them, so you don't want to overdo it up front. Although, after going to the French Laundry, I guess if the chicken was just 2 bites, maybe that's really where it's at. Anyway, so now I've done the cutting on these 3 pieces. There's 2 more things we're going to do. The first one, where's my needler? There it is, my stapler. Let me get my stapler. There we go. A stapler. Let's see this stuff right here, right there, right where the stuff really hanging off. Usually, I'll take that off like that right now, just so it's not hanging off so much. But I don't do a lot of trimming otherwise of the skin. You can't put it back on, and you might actually want it after the brine. But the skin is not going to change too much right here because it's where it's attached. So we can remove that, take that off. And also little hanger-on things like that, you can take that off now. And sometimes a pair of kitchen shears, or as Sherry might say, sheets, will work better. And the other thing you can do, I mean, again, if there's like really random stuff hanging off, you can take that off, because it's not going to make it, it's not going to make it through. Okay, so the pieces, remember where the bone is, needle the thing right through the skin. When you hit the bone, just be careful, because you're going to hit the bone. Don't needle yourself. Voice of experience. Now, some guys will actually kind of needle the crap out of the chicken. And I haven't experimented too much with that, but I think it's probably a good idea. You do want to make sure to needle the skin on first time through, because that'll, even though there's all these little holes in the skin, when we cook, these little holes will, after it brines and cooks, they won't be visible, and I believe they help make the skin more bite through. They contribute to the bite through texture of the skin, you know, by making lots of places where the skin will tear, by weakening the skin. And again, you know, give them all a pretty good once over, and we'll do it to the third one for the sake of demonstration. I have a whole pack of thighs here because of this. I do not know what I'm going to do. I think they're going to end up in the freezer. I don't feel like cooking too much chicken today. Oh, I didn't. Darn it, I got ahead of myself. That's okay. It's a little bit of mayhem going on here. Okay, the other thing that some judges look for, and let's see how I do this, is, you know, on the wide end of the bone, I'm going to dig around and you'll find it. It feels like, usually, there it is. There is a, oh no, that wasn't it. If you're lucky, you'll locate one blood vein that runs right over the bone between these muscle groups here. And I didn't find one there, which it's possible I already, when I trim the piece down, oh, there it is, there it is. It's right hanging off the end here. And maybe that's it. There it is. There's a vein that goes right over the bone. There's a vein there. I don't have a monitor, so I can't see. I thought I sent the camera up. We'll find out. I might have to do this all over again. That'll make me really happy. So again, let's take a look here on this piece. We're going to look for that vein. Sometimes they're really easy to find because they'll have some blood in them. But if you just run your finger down through, separating the muscle groups a little, and you'll eventually see it. I think there it is, right there. Sometimes it's easier to get it with a paper towel, but here it comes. Again, there's that vein, which cooks into nothing in terms of tenderness. It's completely tender. But if there's a little bit of blood left in it and that blood cooks, the judges will look for that. Some judges, chicken-hating judges. Okay, now this one here, I think I found the vein really easily. That's not it. Well, maybe it is it. Maybe that was it. But sometimes you have to dig around. I hate taking the veins out. I think the vein is the stupidest thing. And a judge will have a piece, a thigh, that you cooked it to like 185, and they'll go, oh, look, this chicken's undercooked because I found blood that's cooked. And there it is. I found the vein. Again, the vein tends to lay right over the bone, so you want to work your way up and down the bone, find the vein. On a bigger piece, the vein will be bigger and might have more blood in it, so it might be easier to spot. Anyway, that, I've deveined it. So I've squared them off. I've deveined them. I have jacquarded them, or stapled them, as Kevin and I say. I've pre-trimmed the skin, but again, don't go crazy. You're going to want to have that skin on there when we set the piece up later, after you brine it. Again, if there's a lot hanging off, you can remove that before you brine, because you don't really just want to deal with excess stuff. Now, normally you would do this in advance of the competition. Then not just normally, you will do this in advance of the competition. If you don't do this in advance of the competition, something went wrong. But you really want to do this. Like one time I left our chicken at home after I trimmed it. That was a mistake. And I had to trim chicken, and it was worse. So anyway, enough of the stories. So we have these pieces here. I'm going to demonstrate on another video because my scissors, my kitchen shears aren't available. I'm going to demonstrate on the next segment on how you actually finish the piece when you set the piece up.